Okay, my name's Glenn. I grew up on a farm about 100 kilometres from here, and we were working long hours, my wife and I. We had 2 young children at that stage, but I'll get straight to the point. I was empty inside. There was not a lot of motivation because it was the middle of drought. It was a very difficult time for a lot of people on the farm. It was a farm with 3,000 acres, and there's a few disputes amongst our family, all living in different cottages on this big place called Mandalay. Yeah, and so I said to my wife, I said, look, nothing seems to be fitting with my life, and it sounds like yours too. And she said, talk to Mum, because her mother was a Christian, but she never really said anything to me about anything at that particular stage, other than start to read the Bible. So of all places I started was at the book of Genesis. And this is well before my actual commitment to the Lord. So I did. And I read all the stories, and I was a bit sooky because I was crying at these marvellous stories. So I just concluded that it's either it's all not true or it's all believable. And one way or another, I had to, if it was true, I had to believe it and do something about it. So this went on for about 6 months or so, and anyway, it came to a stage where I had an argument with my father, so I went back up to Tamworth, which was where I am now, and was at my in-laws' place and spoke to my mother-in-law. Her name was Hazel, and I said, look, something's not happening here. And she said, you're chosen of God. I said, oh really? How would you come to that conclusion? She said, he talks to people. He tells people about things. I said, oh. So after a 4-hour talk with her, she said, well, you better come to church. And I was a bit skeptical. I thought to myself, well, what can church do? She said, well, how will you know until you go? So I couldn't argue with that. She said, well, you better come with me. It happened to be a Sunday, so I sat my wife down after I talked with her mother, my mother-in-law. I said, look, I don't even know where it came from. I just said, look, if I make this commitment, whereabouts are you with this commitment? If I make a commitment to this God that your mother serves. And she said, she melded me, she said, I could not think of anything more wonderful to be with you at that particular time. So that was it. So we went along. It was a Pentecostal service. People were clapping, they were raising their hands. Some were moving and shaking, and some were dancing, and I had never experienced anything like that before. The pastor preached, couldn't remember a word he said, didn't know what he was on about, but that was fine. And this lady, who was an intercessor, she was one of the chief members of the congregation there. She was sort of eyeballed me and my wife Tina. At that stage we had 2 young children too, I might add. So the pastor said, well, okay, let's have everyone down the front and we'll have some prayer. I looked at my wife and she looked at me, and I said, well, what do you reckon? And she said, come on. So we went down the front. This lady put her hands on me and my wife. And I still remember to this day what she said after. She said, the Spirit of God came down on your wife and straight across onto you. And I was born again, never prayed a prayer, never said anything. I was just a mess emotionally with tears and that, but I seen the Lord. I seen him, and I knew he was alive. He wasn't a dead God, he was a live God. Anyway, so this elder come up to me after and he said, okay son, it looks like you've had an experience there. What you probably need to do is start reading the Bible. I said, you tell me what to do and I'll do it. Because I was just 100% open for anyone's leading at that particular time. So I went back to my mother-in-law's place and had to go back home to the farm and went back there and started reading the book of John. Anyway, just quickly, just said to my wife, look, that old fella, he was an elder at church, he said, if you start reading, God will talk to me. So I'm reading away, sitting up in bed at night after a day's work. We were working 7 days a week on the farm. I said, hey God, that old fella said you were going to talk to me. I'm not hearing nothing unless I'm just completely deaf. You need to talk to me. That's because what he said. Anyway, I come to John chapter 15, verse 16. And it says, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit. This is a little bit of old English. And whatever you ask of the Father, in my name, he will give it to you. And that verse just grew up in italics and just grew off the page and hit me right in the forehead, just like, well, here I am, and get that into you because that's going to change your life. And I was sitting up in bed and I got pushed back, now I know, by the Holy Spirit into the pillow, like he had his hand on my forehead and just pushed that in there. So undeniable. And my wife leaned over and said, you all right? I said, now I'm okay. I've heard from him, so I've just got to get on with the job. Straight after that, the minister come down. This is about 2 weeks into my conversion. See, we're both converted at exactly the same time. And it's just beautiful. So he come down. My father met him at the gate, was going to punch him out because he'd changed me. I'd told mum and dad I'd found Jesus. And they said, well, was he lost? I said, no, he wasn't lost. But he found me more so than I found him. Anyway, so, I got into strife with the family. They didn't want to hear about it. No, it was chalk and cheese. So I just said, look, this minister's come down. He said, yeah, I know, I met him. And I said, didn't want him talking to you, brainwashing you anymore. He said, we had a good thing going here. I said, no, Dad, we haven't. And so, we had a meeting one night, a few days after that. Back to what the pastor did, he just said, well, the next phase that you have to go through is baptism. I said, you organise it, I'll be there. I said, show me some scriptures and what I have to do. And he give me the scriptures, I read it, and it was just like I needed all this instruction. I just followed it. I just followed all this instruction. I found out, well, that's basically how the church began anyway, later on. I said, so we have to get baptised. Anyway, had a big argument with mum and dad. And one amazing thing was one of my sister-in-laws was down there in the cottage that we were. So mum and dad and Tina and I had this big argument about whether we stop or whether we go. Anyway, so it was not a good scene. And after it, my sister-in-law came out and she said, when you were talking in there, in that next room, I said, yeah. She said, Jesus was on the other side of the door. I said, what? She said, I seen him. He's on. And I said to her straight out, but well, how come he didn't come in and sort things out then? It was quite interesting. So, but that's been a lot of my experience that I've seen angels, been in their presence. They've given me messages and stuff like that. So all of this, I just thought, this is the go. This is what happens with a lot of Christians. But yeah, not yes and no. But anyway, so we ended up getting baptised. The day I got baptised, I got filled with the Holy Spirit. I just went home, had lunch, lied down, and I said, that woman said that helped me get baptised, get filled with the Holy Spirit. She said, you got filled from the boots up, not from the head down. I said, oh, okay, I don't know what that means, but anyway, I'll just go with the flow. Anyway, so the Lord spoke to me while I'm lying there. He said, go outside and sit at the table and start speaking in tongues. This is in the house with all Tina's family. So I did. And lo and behold, my father-in-law walks through the back door while I'm sitting there and I'm praying in tongues. And he started to say, you've sent him mad, he's gone crazy. Look, he doesn't even know what he's saying. Anyway, unbeknownst to me, the day before, he said, this tongues business, this spirit business, I'll believe that when I see it. So he got a double whammy because here I am, and anyway, I'm praying in tongues, changing languages, about 4 or 5 different languages while I'm sitting there. I'm ministering to people, telling them words of knowledge about their life. God's showing me things, he's going back through my life. This broom appeared and just swept all that I knew of my life up to that stage. And this book appeared and he said, I've wiped the slate clean, all the way back to your birth. And I'm looking and I'm seeing all this, then I'm flipping through and he's showing me the sins that I did. And he said, paid for, done with, dealt with, all over and done with. The slate's clean. And I just knew it was God while I'm in the middle praying in tongues. And so I looked at my father-in-law who was leaning against the door in his kitchen, and he's looking at me. So I looked straight at him and I said, hey Joe. He was an Aussie man. No frills about him, rather than fighting the feed. I said, Joe, Jesus Christ loves you so much, and he just melted. The tears started coming. So from day dot, God used me. Anyway, from there on, we powered on. Not everything happened the way that we thought it would, but that's okay too as well. We learned to trust the Lord and just grew in God. So all my side of the family got converted. A lot of Tina's side got converted. It was just like mini revival happening everywhere. And so, but now I'm at a place where I won't bore you with any more detail, but I'm leading a church. It's involved in missionary work. It's involved in prayer meetings. It's involved in bringing people to Christ. It's involved in teaching. It's involved in the community. It's just lovely. I would not trade any moment of it for all the money on the face of the earth. And I thank you for your time.